So today we will talk about section 3.3, which is truth tables for conditional and biconditional. Last time we talked about the truth tables for negation, conjunction, and disjunction. We also talked about how to set up a truth table, right? That part, how to set up, is still the same. So again, to find the number of rows, I go 2 to the power of how many variables there are. And then to find my columns, I'm basically going to go through and say one column for every variable, one column for every negation of a variable, one column for every parentheses, one column for every negation of parentheses, and then my final column for the entire statement. So this time, we'll start with conditional. So the conditional, again, is my if-then statements, right? This is the arrow, if-then. So still the same idea of one of these things is not like the other, right? We'll start this. I've got a and b, so 2 squared equals 4. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. Just like last time, I cut that first column in half. Half of them are true, half of them are false, and then I cut the second column, each of those halves in half. Half true, half false, half true, half false. So the if-then. The way the if-then works is I have to start out with something that's true and end with something that's false, right? Because I'm saying if the first one happens, then the second one also happens, right? So if I study for the test, then I will get a good grade, right? In order for me to make that statement a true statement, I have to get a good grade. If I don't get a good grade, then that's a false statement, right? So the way that this works is I have to start true and end false to be false. So if I want to look at this symbolically, it would look as true, then false equals to false. Again, one of these things is not like the other, so all others are true. Okay, so now we can come back over here to my truth table. We're looking for that one row where it starts true and ends false, right? So since we're going from A to B, right, I can make my life a little bit easier by putting some arrows in here. So be very careful with this. If I asked you B then A, I'd have to draw the arrows the other way, and then I would look the other direction, right? So be very careful. Direction is important here. I'm looking for where it starts true and ends false. So I'm only starting true on rows 1 and 2. I'm only ending false here. So row 2 is the row that I'm looking for. That's the one that will be false. One of these things is not like the other, so everything else will be true. So again, this is the one we want the flashcard for, right? Starts true, ends false to be false. If I know that, then I know that everything else will be true. So now we're going to take what we do and we're just going to make it a little bit more complicated. So only 2 letters, P and Q, and then I want the negation of P and the negation of Q, and then I want if not P, then not Q. I only have 2 letters, so 2 squared is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. I have one column for each of those variables, P and Q. I have one for each negation, not P and not Q, and then I have one for the entire statement. So just like last time, cut the first column in half. Half of them are true, half of them are false. Cut the second column, each of those halves, in half. Half true, half false, half true, half false. Now I want negations. So in the third column, I want the negation of P. So I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning to P, and I'm going to negate it. So I want the opposite of that. And so that will be false, false, true, true. And then next column wants negation of Q. So I'm going to go over to Q and do the opposite of that. So false, true, false, true. And then for my final column, this is where I'm doing my conditional, my if-then. So again, we'll just write it so that we have it. Starts true, ends false to be false. I'm going from not P to not Q, so I'm joining them like this. Starts true. The only two that start true are the last two, rows 3 and 4. The one that ends false is row 3, so that will be my false one. Everything else will be true. And then if I wanted to write my statement, again, I'm looking for the one that's different. So again, that would be my false one. I'm going all the way back to the beginning. And I'll say my statement is true except when P is false and Q is true. Now that we know how to do a conditional, we can talk about biconditional. So the thing about a biconditional, if and only if, means basically that it works both ways, right? If P, then Q, and also if Q, then P, right? So what I'm looking for here is for them to both have the same truth values, right? So they have to both be the same. So when I look at this, it doesn't say both false or both true. It says both the same, right? So here we go. I've got two letters. 2 squared is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. First column cut in half. Half is true, half is false. Second column, cut each of those halves in half. And then true, false, true, false. So when I look at this, both the same. First one, both the same, that's true. Last one, both the same, that's true. In the middle, these two are false. Because if I look at this as an if-then, right, starts true, ends false would be false, right? Going the other way would be okay, right? False then true is true, but for an and, true and true to be true, right? On this one, starts true, ends true, that's true, starts true, ends true, that's true, and so that's how I end up with a T, right? This one starts false, ends true, that's okay, that one works, but when I go the other way, I start true and end false, and that's false, and so that's how I get the F, right? So this one is not as nice, there's not like a one of these things is not like the other, but I can use this idea of both need to be the same to be true, right? If they're not both the same, then they're false. So you could think of it that way also. Depends on like which way you prefer to think of it. So both need to be the same to be true, or both need to be different to be false, right? But this is what we need to remember in order for a biconditional to work. So we'll just do a truth table here with biconditionals in it. Only two letters, the P and the Q. This time we need to fill in the columns, right? So I need one for each letter. That's done, P and Q. I need one for each negation of a letter. So negations of a letter, I have a not P and I have a not Q. So those will go next. Now I need any sets of parentheses. So my parentheses I have here, and that's not Q, then P. Let's make a better Q here. No other sets of parentheses. I have no negation of a set of parentheses, and so then I can go all the way to the end, and I want the entire statement, and so that would be not P, if and only if, not Q, then P. So still 2 letters, 2 squared is still 4. Still 4 rows. Cut that first column in half. Half are true, half are false. Cut each of those halves in half for my next column and alternate true, false, true, false. In the third column, we're doing not P, so I'm going all the way back to P. I'm doing the opposite of that, so false, false, true, true. And then I've got not Q, so I'm going here. Opposite of that would be false, true, false, true. Okay, so now we need to be careful because I want not Q, then P. So I'm going from here all the way back to here. I'm going this direction, right? So arrow is important. So that means true over here, false over here would be my false. Okay, so true over here, false over here. No, that one's good. True over here, false over here. There's my false, right? So I'm true, I'm false. That's my false. Everything else will be true. And now I can do my biconditional. So again, biconditional, same to be true. This time, be careful again because I'm going from here to here. So I'm looking at these two. I want them to be the same. I'm just going to do this to make my life a little bit better. Okay, so false, true, true, true. There's my true, true, false. Everything else will be false. If I wanted to write my statement for this, the one thing that's different is here on row 3. So my statement is true when P is false and Q is true.